when you begin to recognize that your journey is only yours, the first truth that reveals itself is the weight of responsibility. Responsibility is not simply a burden to be carried reluctantly, but rather the defining factor that gives shape to your existence. Without it, life drifts into chaos, and chaos is no friend of human flourishing. To live responsibly means to understand that no one else can truly walk your path for you, no matter how much they may love you or wish the best for you. They can advise, they can support, they can cheer from the sidelines, but in the end, the steps must be taken by your own feet. And the quality of those steps is determined not by circumstance, not by privilege, not even by luck, but by how much responsibility you are willing to shoulder. It is tempting to look outward and wish for someone else to carry your load, to blame the world for its unfairness, to resent others for what they seem to have. But each time you do that, you abandon a piece of your own potential. Responsibility is the act of reclaiming it. When you wake up in the morning and decide to direct your energy towards something meaningful instead of indulging in distraction, you are choosing responsibility. When you stop making excuses and acknowledge your own role in the way life is unfolding, you are stepping onto your path with clarity. And when you decide to confront the truth, however painful it may be, rather than hiding behind illusions, you are accepting the cost of becoming someone capable of carrying their own life forward. Think about it this way: responsibility transforms suffering into purpose. Life is suffering. That is undeniable. But when you take on responsibility, suffering is no longer meaningless. It becomes the price of growth, the toll you pay to cross into the next stage of who you could be. If you refuse that responsibility, the suffering doesn't disappear. It only becomes heavier, more chaotic, and more destructive. You will suffer anyway, but without responsibility, the suffering will lack direction. With it, suffering becomes fuel for progress. Consider how children grow. When a child is small, they rely completely on the responsibility of others. But the measure of their growth is how much responsibility they begin to take for themselves. At first it's small, tying their shoes, brushing their teeth, learning to speak politely. Later it expands, studying for exams, making decisions, working, building relationships. At each stage, growth is tied directly to the level of responsibility they assume. Adults are no different. Growth stops not because life offers no more opportunities, but because people decide they have carried enough. They lay down the responsibility that once gave them strength, and in doing so, they weaken themselves. So your journey is yours because no one can decide how much responsibility you will carry. That choice is yours alone, and it is made daily. Each responsibility you take on is a step further along the road of becoming who you could be. Each time you reject it, you remain stagnant. And when you look back years later, it will not be the privileges or opportunities of others that determine where you stand. It will be the weight of responsibility you either embraced or refused. Your life will bear the shape of that decision. Comparison is one of the most deceptive traps you can fall into, because it disguises itself as motivation while secretly corroding your sense of worth. It whispers that you are behind, that you should be where someone else already is, that your progress is meaningless because it doesn't measure up to theirs. But the truth is, your life is not theirs, and theirs is not yours. Each person carries a unique set of experiences, talents, wounds, and responsibilities. To measure your journey against theirs is like comparing the growth of an oak tree to the bloom of a rose. Both are beautiful in their own right, yet utterly different in their nature. The oak will take decades to show its full strength, while the rose may dazzle quickly but fade with the seasons. If the oak tried to imitate the rose, it would never become the forest giant it was meant to be. The modern world makes comparison nearly unavoidable. Social media parades the highlight reels of other people's lives, carefully curated snapshots designed to provoke envy and admiration. You see someone's success, their wealth, their beauty, their lifestyle, but you don't see the cost. You don't see the sacrifices they made, the pain they endured, or the compromises they accepted. And even if you could see it, it still wouldn't matter because their path is not yours. The energy you waste on comparing yourself could be invested in building yourself. Every moment you spend wishing for what others have is a moment you steal from the effort of creating something that is truly your own. Comparison also blinds you to your progress. You may be climbing steadily, making small but meaningful improvements, but because you fix your eyes on someone ahead of you, you convince yourself you're failing. Yet if you turned and looked back, you would see how far you've already come. This is the tragedy of comparison. It robs you of gratitude for your growth and replaces it with bitterness for what you don't yet have. Gratitude grounds you, comparison uproots you. There's also a deeper danger. Comparison often pushes you toward goals that don't even belong to you. You see someone with influence and you decide you want that. You see someone with wealth and you chase it too. But are those truly your values, or are they borrowed dreams? If you achieve them, will you even feel fulfilled? Or will you realize too late that you climbed a mountain only to discover it was the wrong one? By obsessing over others, you risk abandoning your authentic journey for one that looks impressive from the outside, but feels hollow within. The antidote to comparison is responsibility to yourself. Instead of asking, "How do I measure against them?" ask, "Am I better than I was yesterday?" That is the only question that matters. Progress is not relative, it is personal. Your task is not to outpace others, but to outgrow who you were. If you can commit to that, then your journey remains intact, untouched by the distractions of envy. You will not be swayed by who is ahead or who is behind, because your eyes will be fixed on your own unfolding path. And when you reach a place of strength, it won't matter if someone else got there faster. You will know it was yours, earned in your way, at your pace, on your terms. Struggle is not an interruption to your journey. It is the journey. Every ounce of progress you will ever make is purchased with discomfort, frustration, and sometimes outright suffering. Yet most people spend their lives trying to avoid struggle, as if it were some mistake in the system of existence, something unfair that should not be happening to them. But the truth is, struggle is the forge in which strength is created. Without it, there is no resilience, no depth, no capacity to face the storms that inevitably come. If life were smooth, effortless, and free of resistance, you would remain weak, fragile, and unprepared. The very obstacles you wish would disappear are the very things shaping you into someone capable of carrying the weight of your future. It is easy to romanticize success when you look at it from a distance. You see the polished outcome, the achievement, the recognition. But hidden behind every success is a history of struggle late nights when quitting seemed easier, failures that tested belief, humiliations that burned but taught humility, sacrifices that others never saw. The struggle is the invisible foundation of all meaningful accomplishments. And when you refuse to engage with it, when you demand shortcuts or comfort, you rob yourself of the very transformation that success requires. What looks like an obstacle is often an invitation to grow stronger, to become wiser, to refine your character. There is a reason why people who endure hardship often carry a presence that cannot be faked. You can sense it in the way they speak, the way they carry themselves. They know something about life that those shielded from struggle cannot understand. They have faced their own suffering and emerged not unscarred, but capable. Struggle gives you that kind of authenticity. It tears away illusions about yourself, about others, about the world, and it forces you to see reality for what it is. And when you face reality with open eyes, You become dangerous in the best sense. You cannot be easily deceived, manipulated, or broken. But struggle is not only external. The greatest battles are fought internally. The struggle to discipline your mind when it wants ease, to resist bitterness when life feels unfair, to keep faith in the face of failure. These are wars that no one else sees, yet they are the most important wars you will ever fight. And when you win them, even in small ways, you transform yourself. Each victory over yourself is a step forward in your journey, and each defeat, if reflected upon, becomes a teacher sharper than any textbook or lecture. So when struggle comes, and it will, do not ask, why me? Ask instead, what is this trying to make of me? Because every hardship carries within it a seed of potential, and that potential is uniquely yours to claim. If you avoid it, that seed withers, and so does a part of you. But if you embrace it, even through pain, even through exhaustion, you water that seed and allow it to grow into something extraordinary. In the end, it is not the absence of struggle that defines a fulfilled life, but the courage to walk through it and allow it to shape you into the person your journey requires you to be. Discipline is the invisible architect of your destiny. People often talk about dreams, ambitions, and goals as though they are enough to carry them forward. But without discipline, those aspirations dissolve into nothing more than wishful thinking. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you could be. It is the decision to act consistently, not just when you feel motivated or inspired, but when it is inconvenient, tiring, or dull. And that is why discipline is so rare and so powerful. Because while talent may give you a head start and luck may open a door, it is discipline that ensures you keep moving forward, step by step, until the vision in your mind becomes a reality in world. What makes discipline so transformative is its cumulative nature. One disciplined action might seem small, almost insignificant, but repeated over time it compounds into extraordinary change. The person who chooses to study a little each day instead of cramming at the last moment is building not just knowledge but also character. The person who saves a small portion of their income consistently is building stability that no sudden windfall could ever provide. The one who commits to exercise regularly, even when the results are slow, is shaping not only their body, but their mind's resilience. Discipline multiplies in value the longer you practice it, and it is precisely this compounding effect that determines the trajectory of your destiny. Without discipline, you are at the mercy of your impulses. You drift according to moods, distractions, and external pressures. One day you feel productive, the next day you feel lazy, and the inconsistency keeps you trapped in cycles of starting and quitting. Discipline breaks that cycle because it teaches you that your feelings do not decide your future. Your actions do. When you can act despite resistance, you are no longer a prisoner of fleeting emotions. You reclaim authority over your life. But discipline is not punishment, though many people view it that way. It is not about denying yourself joy or forcing yourself into a rigid box of rules. True discipline is the act of aligning your actions with your higher values. It is sacrificing short-term comfort for long-term meaning. It is saying no to distractions so you can say yes to something greater. In that sense, discipline is the purest form of self-respect, because it demonstrates that you value your potential enough to protect it with daily effort. The most remarkable thing about discipline is how it transforms identity. At first, you discipline yourself to do hard things, but eventually, those disciplined actions shape you into the kind of person who does hard things naturally. It ceases to feel like a forced effort and becomes an expression of who you are. That is why people who live with discipline often seem unstoppable. Their habits have fused with their identity. And when your identity aligns with your actions, your destiny follows. So if you want your journey to lead somewhere meaningful, cultivate discipline, not as a temporary tool, but as a way of life. It will not always be easy, and it will often be thankless, but it will give you something far more valuable than ease or recognition. It will give you mastery over yourself. And in mastering yourself, you create the conditions to master your destiny. Authenticity is the foundation of a life worth living, but it is constantly threatened by the temptation to seek approval from others. From a very young age, we are trained to value the opinions of those around us: parents, teachers, peers, colleagues. Approval feels good because it provides validation, a sense that we are accepted and valued. But when approval becomes the compass by which you navigate your life, you abandon the very thing that makes your journey uniquely yours, your authenticity. Living for approval means you are shaping your actions, your words, even your dreams, to fit the expectations of others. And while that may earn you temporary applause, it will leave you with the gnawing sense that you have betrayed yourself. Authenticity is not easy. It requires the courage to say what you mean, to pursue what genuinely matters to you, and to stand firm when those choices are unpopular. The danger of chasing approval is that it ties your self-worth to something outside of your control. You cannot govern the opinions of others. They are fickle, shifting with moods, circumstances, and personal biases. If you allow their opinions to dictate your life, you will forever be enslaved to forces you cannot predict or master. But if you anchor yourself in authenticity, you ground your life in values that remain steady no matter how the crowd reacts. Approval may open doors, but authenticity builds character. You might gain friends, opportunities, and recognition by molding yourself to fit what others want, but the cost is that you lose the clarity of knowing who you are. Approval is fragile. When it fades, so does the false identity you constructed to win it. Authenticity, on the other hand, is durable. When you live in alignment with what you truly believe and value, you may lose some approval, but what you gain is integrity, peace of mind, and the respect that comes from being genuine. There is also a paradox here. The more you chase approval, the less respect you actually earn. People can sense when someone is trying too hard to please, and it breeds mistrust. But when you stand firmly in authenticity, even those who disagree with you will often respect you. Authenticity radiates strength because it shows you are not dependent on the shifting winds of public opinion. It communicates that you are rooted, and that rootedness makes you reliable, even admirable. The journey of authenticity requires sacrifice. You may disappoint people, you may be misunderstood, you may even lose relationships or opportunities that were built on a false version of yourself. But what you gain is immeasurably more valuable: the ability to look at your own reflection and recognize it as real. And that integrity creates a sense of stability that no amount of approval could ever replace. When the applause fades, and it always does, authenticity ensures that you still have yourself. So your journey must be guided not by the craving for approval, but by the commitment to authenticity. Only then does it remain yours, uncontaminated by the pressures of conformity. Approval may come as a byproduct, or it may not. But either way, you will walk your path with a clear conscience, knowing you have not traded your truth for the fleeting comfort of someone else's validation. Legacy is not built on possessions, popularity, or the fleeting recognition of the crowd. It is built on self-mastery. To master yourself is to become the kind of person whose life speaks long after they are gone. Your journey at its core is not about chasing external markers of success. It is about becoming someone worthy of respect, someone whose discipline, courage, and authenticity inspire others by the sheer force of example. Self-mastery is not the absence of weakness or flaw. It is the willingness to confront them, to wrestle with the darker parts of yourself, and to emerge stronger, wiser, and more whole. When you begin to understand that your journey is only yours, you also realize that your greatest adversary is not the competition outside but the chaos within. Anger, envy, laziness, fear, these are the battles that determine the direction of your life. You can conquer the world externally, but if you remain enslaved by these forces, you will never know peace. Self-mastery means taming those impulses, not by suppressing them in denial, but by learning to direct them towards something constructive. Anger can become determination. Fear can become caution tempered with courage. Envy can become motivation. Through mastery, the very weaknesses that once threatened to destroy you can become sources of strength. Self-mastery also sharpens your ability to endure. Life will test you with suffering, loss, and failure, and without mastery, those tests will break you. But with mastery, you learn to carry them with dignity. You may not control the storms of life, but you can control how you respond to them. That control is where true power lies, because it means no matter what the world takes from you, it cannot take your character. And that character is the foundation of your legacy. Consider how people remember those they admire most. It is rarely because of wealth or possessions. It is because of the kind of person they became. We admire the one who stood firm when it was easier to bend, who chose integrity when compromise promised comfort, who faced hardship without bitterness. These are the marks of self-mastery, and they leave an imprint that outlasts any temporary success. When you cultivate mastery over yourself, you become a living example of what is possible, and that example shapes the lives of others in ways you may never fully see. But legacy is not something you decide to build at the end of your life. It is something you construct every day in the choices you make. Each act of discipline, each rejection of pettiness, each courageous decision becomes a brick in that legacy. Over time, those bricks form a structure that will stand long after you are gone. And while you may not control whether people approve of you or celebrate you, you do control whether they respect you. That respect is earned through self-mastery, and once it is earned, it does not fade. So the journey that belongs only to you is also the one that calls you to mastery over yourself. Because in the end, the world will forget many of your possessions, your accomplishments, even your words. But it will not forget the example of your life, the legacy of someone who wrestled with themselves and emerged capable of bearing the weight of existence with strength, wisdom, and grace. That is the true reward of self-mastery, and the only legacy worth leaving behind.